Yeah, this is like, it sounds like it's an anti-crafting game. You're destroying stuff, right? Maybe it's not a new genre, it's just an inverse genre. Maybe that's a thing that you can do, is you just take a genre that exists and do the opposite.
What is up? What is up? What is up, everybody? Let us fire it up. I'm going to get so owned in this game. It's time that we get to the Steam Top 50 and seeing what the latest trends are. Gary's Mod. There's TF2. It's usually around somewhere. Woo! Oh, it's snakes. Does it just have really high retention? This genre is still viable. Or you just gotta shoot his butt. There was kind of a trend for a while. Like, that is just the way things work. We did it!
What is up, chums? Welcome to the Clark Tank. We're supposed to be moving into our new office next week, so I won't have to be doing these work-from-home Clark Tanks. Today we are going to play Hardspace Shipbreaker for a few reasons. I've been hearing, well, first of all, it's doing well. Second of all, it's made by Blackbird Interactive, and at least some of the team, I'm not sure where the publisher is at, but some of the teams here in Vancouver, and I've heard that the team is not super big, which is what we try to do at Brace Yourself Games. We try to make games that look big and impressive with smaller teams. But also from what I've been hearing from coworkers and other people on the internet, the genre of this game is not entirely clear, which is, I want to learn more about that, because of course we're always interested in genres and which ones are viable, and it's not often that new genres are born. So if this is one, we want to, when it happens, when people manage to make games in, new genres or vaguely new genres, we want to, and they're successful, we want to learn as much as we can about that, like how did they do it, because our current method involves looking at genres that are viable and then innovating within those genres. But if there was a way to predictably succeed while pioneering new genres, that would be even cooler. So yeah, I want to learn more about Hardspace Shipbreaker, which is an interesting name. I've heard a lot of people say it wrong, and they say shipbreakers. Like, more than half of the people that refer to this game say shipbreakers. And also, what's the deal with the Hardspace part of it? Is it part of some franchise that I'm not aware of, or are they trying to start the beginning of a franchise that will always be Hardspace : something? I don't really know. And does Hardspace imply the existence of soft space? Are they going to come out later with Soft Space Shipmaker? I'm looking forward to checking that out later in the stream. Yeah, this is like, it sounds like it's an anti-crafting game. You're destroying stuff, right? Maybe it's not a new genre, it's just an inverse genre. Maybe that's a thing that you can do, is you just take a genre that exists and do the opposite. Because crafting games, survival-y games definitely are a thing.
Let's get to work.
It looks shiny and expensive and impressive. It's funny, the music makes it sound all epic, but like, it's kind of like that, what was it? It was like the train station rehabilitation game where you find derelict old train stations and you fix them up. This is, in some ways somewhat similar, where you're doing a thing that's kind of like, it's like hard work. It's like a real job, but they make it sound all epic with the dialogue and the music and things like that, which is great. But yeah, looking forward to trying it out. Okay, looks like we're gonna do some feedback on a few different pages here. Hang on, I'm just gonna load them all first. Fashion Police Squad. It's clever. Fashion Police is a known phrase. So you change their clothes by shooting them? Oh, and then there's like a catwalk afterwards to show what you've achieved. Fashion Police Squad is a humorous retro FPS where you fight against fashion crime using attire-enhancing weaponry, clean the streets off of socks and sandals as Sergeant Dez and experience a single... Oh, as Sergeant Dez. Okay, I thought that... I imagined a comma there that wasn't there. And experience a single-player story full of fabulous characters, dazzling encounters, and fierce runway shows. That is super cool. Yeah, it's an old-timey sewing machine, but it's actually a gun. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I think the trailer is great, and the description and stuff is appropriate. My only concern with this sort of thing is that it's kind of somewhat of a mashup. So you're taking an FPS game, and then the audience that you're trying to merge it with is people who would find, fashion humor interesting, right? And so your audience is the overlap of FPS players and people who would be into this kind of humor. And I don't know how much overlap there is. I hope that there is a lot of overlap there. But yeah, when you do that sort of thing, it's similar to what we did with Necrodancer. It's somewhat risky because if there's not a lot of overlap, then the audience that you're targeting will be small. But if there is, then you stand to do very well, because whenever there is the overlap, if there are people that are really excited about FPSs and they're big into fashion, then they would see this and get really excited about it and buy it right away. I've said that a few times about Necrodancer, where there's a bunch of different kinds of people that will come to your store page. Some that'll be like, look at it and be like, nah, it's awful, I hate it, and they don't buy the game, right? Some that are like, it seems pretty cool, but not cool enough for them to buy, or maybe they wishlisted and don't end up buying it. And then there are the people that really, really like it and just buy it right away. And you want to increase the percentage of those people that really, really like it and buy it right away. And when you have an overlap of two genres, or two, I guess fashion is not really a genre, but interest groups. If you have an overlap and someone exists in that overlap and they like both of those things a lot, they're more likely to buy it right away. So you are limiting your audience size by doing that sort of overlap, but the people that live in that overlap are much more likely to convert and buy. So as long as that overlap is large enough, then you should do well, in my opinion. Normally we target genres because we can estimate the size of the genre, but when you do the overlaps, you're essentially making a subgenre, and you don't know the size of that subgenre until you test it. And presumably there is no other FPS fashion game, right? So it's hard for you to know exactly. But yeah, it's super clever. It seems really well executed. I like the trailer and everything else that you got going on. So best of luck. Okay, we got a few others to look at. Dream Engine's Nomad Cities, a survival city building game with flying cities. Build, automate, and defend a flying city to survive in a wacky, nightmare-infested post-apocalyptic world full of strange science and dreams. Strange science and dreams? I was not expecting the dreams part. That's interesting. Okay. Well, we know city builders are viable. Ooh, especially if they have like automation and stuff. This music sounds a bit Tim Burton-ish. We've got tower defense-y sort of things. You are showing things here at the start. Power being transferred, resources being moved around, conveyors and whatnot. Those sorts of things get people excited for sure. So yeah, Steger is saying I'd like to see some city building. I think that would be my only criticism, is that the one-shot thing, with the camera just panning around, is cool and artistic, but you may be better served by doing actual cuts and just showing the things that get city builder fans the most hyped, which, you were showing power, you were showing resources moving around and stuff, but yeah, you didn't show much building. I think that one thing that city builders often do to great effect, which we did with some of our Industries of Titan trailers as well, is a time lapse. So you could show like placing a few buildings manually at regular speed, and then you can show a time lapse of it all just getting bigger, because that's sort of what really gets city builder players excited, is like, what cool massive thing can I build? And so we didn't really have too much of the building aspect of it in this, but yeah, the surprise at the end was cool. I think you could probably still do the surprise at the end if you showed more of the building and did some cuts and things like that earlier on. But I don't think it's a bad trailer by any means. I just think that, yeah, I guess the other thing to comment on is the theme. I have not seen a city builder with that sort of whimsical Tim Burton-ish theme. So it's not a genre, like Tim Burton-ish art is not a genre, but it's sort of like an interest group, right? And is there an overlap of people who like that kind of visual style and people who like city builders? Again, I'm not sure, because I cannot think of others that have done that. It's a slightly risky thing to do, because I can't think of others that have done it, right? So you don't know if that overlap is large or small, but it looks cool. But yeah, it possibly alienating. It's tricky because you don't want to just do the same bland thing that other games have done. Then that gets samey and boring. But at the same time, if you take risks, then you may be decreasing your potential audience size. So that's another thing to consider. So with Industries of Titan, we knew that the audience of gamers in general really liked that cyberpunk sort of sci-fi future style that we were using. We knew that in part because Antoine, the art director on the game, he makes that kind of art and tweets about it and stuff and gets lots of retweets and things like that. So it's pretty clear that people liked that look. But yeah, I'm not sure. It's possible that you have evidence to suggest that this look works well with gamers in general or with City Builder fans. I'm not sure, but that would be a thing that I would consider. But that would have been back when you were starting the game for sure. There's nothing you could really do to change it now other than possibly improving the trailer a little bit. Yeah, Don't Starve, I suppose, is that whimsical sort of style. It's a survival game, though, not City Builder. And Don't Starve has certainly done extremely, extremely well. So that's a good point. So that's a point in favor of this kind of style. It's not quite the same style, but it's close. Okay, last one. Toodee and Topdee. Okay. It's like a level editor, but built right into the gameplay itself. Oh, I see. So one of them is in 2 dimensions. The other one is the top-down view. I get it. That is interesting. And different enemies behave differently in the different views. Oh, that reminds me of the Adventures of Lolo. Yeah, that is a very cool concept. I am surprised that no one has done that before because it makes a lot of sense and has a lot of cool gameplay implications. Yeah, I think the gameplay has the potential to be extremely good. Let's see the description. A cosmic turbulence caused the worlds of 2D and Topdee to merge with each other. Switch between 2D's 2D platforming and Topdee's top-down block pushing to solve mind-melting puzzles and bring back balance to the universe. So I think it's very impressive. My only concern is that this type of game is the type of game that would have done extremely well in like 2009, 2010 if you had launched it back then. You could have won some IGF awards and, been featured heavily on Steam, that sort of thing. It's a little harder for this type of game these days. There are some very clever indie puzzle games like Baba Is You that do succeed these days, and so I hope that yours will be one of those. If the gameplay is as compelling as it seems, then it's possible. But it is tricky because if it feels primarily like a puzzle game, there are very few puzzle games other than Baba Is You or The Witness, both of which are special in very different ways that succeed these days. So that can make it tricky. I think it's pretty freaking cool concept. Congrats. Fingers crossed that it goes well for you because this is my kind of game and like old school indie game from back in the day. This would have been extremely successful, I think. How do you recommend go about marketing it now in 2020? Yeah, when people ask questions like that, it's really hard because obviously just doing the same sort of marketing that everyone else is doing, like, hey, I talked to some press, I talked to some streamers, some of them ignored me, some of them didn't, blah, 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 is not going to move the needle. It's still important to do it, but everyone does it. So it's not going to give you any sort of competitive advantage to do it unless you have a way of doing it significantly better than everybody else. All 3 of you showed some pretty impressive game design and creative skills in those games, but not everybody brings that same level of attention and effort to designing their marketing plans. I'm not sure if it was the last Clark Tank or the one before, but we talked recently about different games like Punch Club did a thing where I think they said they were going to launch their game in 20 days or 30 days or something, but they would launch it one day sooner for every, can't remember if it was like 100 retweets or a certain number of views or pre-orders or something like that. And people talked about it just because of that gimmick, and that gimmick had nothing to do with the game. You could have done that with any game. You can't do that gimmick again now because they already did it, and no one's going to react as strongly to it because Punch Club did that already. But that was a unique thing that they did, and it brought attention to their game. So it just took some creativity to think of it a unique thing that can get people's attention. And I think it's the same sort of skill as game design, because you're just trying to figure out. Game design is just applied psychology. You either have a intuitive or sort of academic understanding of psychology, and then you use that to deliver as much enjoyment or certain emotions to your players as you can. And marketing is the same. It's using your knowledge, intuitive or academic, of psychology to try to get attention for something. It could be your game, it could be for shoes or McDonald's or whatever, right? And so I think that people who have the ability to design games also have the ability to design compelling marketing hooks. It just requires effort. And I think a lot of indies think, oh, I'm done, I finished the game, that's all that I need to do. And you're kind of exhausted at the finish line after a year or multiple years of work, and I understand that. But putting the effort into the marketing can multiply the success that you have with your game by 2 or 3 or 4. So with Necrodancer, we did a thing called the Necrothon, which was for 10 days before the launch of the game. We had a charity and not charity streaming racing contest with basically every variety streamer on Twitch was a part of this, and we broke them into teams. And this was before like charity streams and stuff were a big thing. So it was a unique idea back then. And so if you watched basically any variety streamer on on Twitch back then, you would have seen them playing Necrodancer for those 10 days just before the launch. And so half of the money went to the charity of the winning team's choices, and there was multiple categories, and half the money went to those teams themselves. And so they made some money for themselves, they made it for charity. So designed it like that so that they could feel good about what they were doing. It doesn't seem greedy if half of the money is going to charity, but it was still motivating them personally too, because everyone needs money, and streamers are no exception to that. So that was a unique thing that we did to help get some attention for Necrodancer, and that helped to ensure that our day one launch spike was strong. There was things like Cluster Truck, where the devs could come into a stream and mess with the streamer live and do things to them in the game. I'm not sure how they did that technically, but they did, and I remember a lot of streamers thought that was interesting. There's been a variety of things over the years that people have done to get attention for their game that has basically nothing to do with their game itself. So you can do those things too. So, but it depends on what your game is, that the marketing hook, if it can relate to your game, that's all the better, because Necrodancer was a speedrunning game, and so we designed a speedrunning event for it. So I cannot come up with the ideas for you. It's just like game design. You need to come up with that hooky idea yourself. If I had cool marketing hook ideas in my back pocket, I would be saving them up to use them on my future games. And yeah, unfortunately, I haven't. I guess that's something that I should try to do in the future, is analyze all of those marketing hooks that we've seen have success, and try to figure out what is the nature of them, what are the ones that succeed and what doesn't, what are the patterns there. That's what I do with everything that I'm trying to, succeed in, is look at the successes and the failures and look for patterns. And you can use that information to help you to design successful hooks yourself. That is my advice. It's very general sort of advice, but I think the thing that most indies need to hear is that you got to use your creativity on the marketing side just the same as you do on the game design side, and don't let your brain twist it into some boring homework thing that you have to do. It's interesting. I think it's interesting. It's tough for streamers to like playing puzzle games. Backseating, yeah, I think puzzle games are having a harder time these days for a variety of reasons. Backseating sucks. No one really wants to look stupid while they're playing. No one wants to sit there and be stumped while they're playing a game. And then also, if someone has watched a streamer play a game, a puzzle game, are they gonna go buy that game then themselves? They've seen the solutions. So yeah, I was saying PAX West, PAX Australia canceled. It's sad. Also, TwitchCon was canceled. So those are and we were gonna go to Gamescom Singapore, but that's also been canceled, and regular Gamescom. all canceled. So no more events for us at Brace Yourself Games for the rest of this year. Luckily, we did go to PAX East before all heck broke loose earlier this year. But yeah, it's a big bummer for us because we travel a lot and we have a big booth that we bring to shows and we enjoy doing it and we get a lot of value out of it. So it's sad, but it has allowed us to focus more on staying home and developing our dang games. So there's a bright side. And also, there are things like this, the Steam Game Festival Summer Edition, that have sprung up partly in response to COVID, but also in response to people's calls for more curated content on storefronts. And this one has been very interesting. I know a lot of people, Bit Summit too. I know, I was sad. I was going to come to Japan twice this year and now it's 0. I've heard a lot of people, indies and gamers, and indies who are gamers, react to this summer festival very differently. Some people are like, 900 demos, I'm so excited, I'm just spending all of my time just downloading these demos and playing billions of games, it's amazing. Whereas a lot of indies are scared because they're like, look at these games, they're all very good. There are so many of these 900 games that are very high quality, and that is frightening, for sure. And that is a thing that we do pay attention to closely on the Clark Tank here. However, I would say, don't panic. Like the Hitchhiker's Guide says, don't panic. Because a lot of these games, I know some people from here in Vancouver or other friends from elsewhere that busted their butts working hard to get their demos ready in time for this. And so what this has done is it has drawn forward, a lot of these games are not coming out anytime soon, but they just put out their demo so that they could be a part of this event. So it drew forward a whole bunch of gaming content, and now it's all available in demo form this week. And so it makes it look really frightening, but I think these 900 demos would have been spread out over the next year or so. It's still a lot of competition, because even if you spread that over a year, that's three solid game demos per day of that year. But we've known that has been happening on Steam for quite a while. We know that there's between 20 and 30 games launching pretty much every day. It's just that I think many people don't do what we do on the Clark Tank, and so they are not aware of how much competition there is, so this is a shock for them. But just try to enjoy it as a gamer. Download some demos of things that excite you and enjoy it. The fact that there are 900 demos here doesn't change the way the industry has been. It just made it visible. Well, first of all, some people's wishlist numbers from this event are great, despite the 900 other games in the festival. And some are saying their wishlist numbers are not great, which is understandable because you're splitting the eyeballs 900 ways. So there's bound to be some people that don't get a very large share, unfortunately, but still certainly better than nothing. But I have also been hearing from some friends who have recently launched games and have demos. Some of them, their demos are converting really well, and they're like, yes, you should consider it. And some of them, their demos are converting not well, and they're saying, never do it. So that's just small numbers. Anecdotally, the results are mixed. I don't know, even then, even if your conversion rate is like 25% or even 50% or something like that, it could still possibly be harming your overall revenue, because people who were going to buy the game might just try the demo instead. And if your conversion rate is 50%, it might have been that 100% of those were just going to buy it. And now instead, they played and half of them were like, oh, actually, it's not for me. Now, of course, the 100% could have bought and then refunded, and you might have ended up with only 50%. But I think there's a psychological principle that once people have actually bought something, they're much less likely to refund it. And return rates are not usually like 50%. It's usually a couple percent, or low teens is the kind of the highest that I've ever heard. So you do kind of want to just convert people rather than having them buy the demo or download the demo. However, I think if for certain types of games, and the anecdotal evidence that I've heard from friends, games that are kind of weird and people aren't sure about the genre or something like that, those seem to be the ones where the demo is actually helping. Whereas if the game is more understandable from the trailers and screenshots and such, then the demo might hurt you. So if people are like scared, they won't buy because they don't understand what this game even is, then maybe a demo is great. So like Factorio, when it first came out, it had a demo and I was surprised, but it was a very new kind of thing, at least back then. So perhaps a demo made sense, although now everyone sort of knows these factory style games are awesome. Probably don't need a demo anymore, but that's just my current gut reaction to demos and some anecdotal information I've been hearing. But yeah, this tweet from Lars, he's just talking about some tools he's been making for Valve to kind of help the curators sort through the content. It's an interesting part of, I don't know what you call it, like storefront development these days, like trying to classify things in terms of tags, because yeah, adventure could mean a billion different things. And I think Lars even says in here that the original Dragon Warrior game, which is obviously an RPG, Dragon Quest, used to be called an adventure game. Well, it's because the RPG genre didn't exist yet, but there are a lot of other genres that we see springing up all the time that don't have a name. But you know, some machine learning algorithm might be able to sort of clump them together, use principal component analysis or something like that to try to figure out like, oh, these groups of players are all clumping around this type of game, these three games. Maybe these three games, because they're so, they share such a similar cohort of users, maybe they're a new genre. So if we did that sort of analysis, so Lars, I don't know if you can do PCA on all of the data that Valve has, but you might be able to identify clumps that you would not have realized were clumps, and then look at them and come up with new genre names for them. I think that would be valuable. So yeah, things like daylikes that we've been talking about, and then the multiplayer battle arena things like For Honor and whatnot. There are some new genres coming out that we don't have proper words for. So yeah, Simon also talking about the festival, some people's results of it. And yeah, I think that some developers were not expecting there to be so many hundreds of other games. I have seen some be a little disappointed. Yeah, I guess just it's an expectations issue. However, the previous festivals, there were a lot of people as well. So you could have probably predicted it. And he's talking about all these showcases. So yeah, if you look at all the showcases, 69 games shown in 120 minutes, 44 games shown in 90 minutes. So yeah, there's just hundreds and hundreds of games being shown these days. And yeah, the PlayStation stuff, a lot of these indie trailers were getting a ton of views, which is good, but I think it's also to be expected because a lot of press would normally be focused on E3 or PAX and Gamescom and whatnot, and since they can't do that, it's happening here online. And I think it makes it seem like there's more games than ever before, when actually normally there would just be this many games on the show floor at PAX and very few of them would get attention. But if you count the total number of them in these shows, like even the ones that would have been on the show floor but probably wouldn't have got a lot of attention, they're gonna, account for some of these 52 games in the PC gaming show. All right, some other news stuff. How to price your game and thrive during Steam sales. So basically an article quoting a lot of different indies and some Valve folks talking about what you should keep in mind when you are trying to decide how to price your game. The general sort of consensus here is that price it higher than you think, which I agree with for the most part. No single correct discounting strategy. Yeah, it depends on your game and how well your game is selling, and similar to how we talk a lot about like how many bullets you have in terms of marketing, like how many times are the press going to pay attention to your game. That dictates how you might kind of compartmentalize your news about your game launch or your release date announcement, that sort of thing. Are you going to break those things into 3 different press blasts or just go for one? Because if you don't think the press cares too much about your game, you might want to jam all the big news into one to make it more likely that they pay attention to you. But I think similar with discounting, if your game is not doing so well, you may want to discount more rapidly in order to jump into the top sellers and get a bit of a chart position that might help you get some visibility on the store. Take Steam sales into account. Of course, a lot of revenue comes from sales events, so having a higher price allows you to discount 50% and your game still have a significant price tag still. Researching your competitors makes a lot of sense. We did that for sure with Industries of Titan. Consider which tier your game falls into. So when you look at your competitors, how well do you stack up compared to them? Best to make pricing and discount decisions while keeping the long-term perception of the product in mind. Yeah, if you discount it super rapidly, obviously that can cause problems with perceived value. Don't rely exclusively on seasonal sales. So yeah, there are a lot of things that you can do. They mention later on about getting featured, timing your updates around sales, bundling with other games. This is similar to the marketing stuff that we were talking about before, but basically just be creative and try to come up with ways that you could convince the storefront, whether it's Valve, Steam, or the PlayStation Store, or the Microsoft Store, or the Nintendo Store. Like, why would they want to feature your game? And if you have a reason because of some cool update, or maybe you did a collaboration with some prominent musician or some prominent other game developer or something like that, then they might consider promoting what you've done. So being creative with what you do, how you tie things to your discounts can help a lot, can make you hundreds of thousands of dollars just making one clever decision. It also reinforces the value of traveling and meeting people, because if you're bundling, if you know other indies, they're more likely to bundle their games with you. And if you bundle your games with other indies, like we've done, we did like a good soundtrack, indie games with good soundtracks bundle, and then we got a midweek madness sale because of that. Those sorts of things happen more often if you know people and they're like, hey, my friend Ryan, I should talk to him about adding his game to this bundle. So that's one of the many indirect advantages that come from traveling to shows like PAX. I think that's about it. I guess finding your sweet spot is something we did with Necrodancers. Like, we slowly stair-stepped our discounts down, as I think makes sense. And now we've sort of stuck at 80% off for the base game and 50% off for the DLC. We seem to get pretty good traction when we do that. I do think if you went from 80% to 90%, that would halve our revenue. Because 80%, that means we're charging 20%. And if you go to 90%, that means we're charging 10%. That's half. So are we really going to do double the units? I don't think so. And then having the DLC at 50% off, it's 50% is a significant discount, and they do talk about the psychological impact of 50% in here. And also it's sort of an impulse. Well, like the base game is so cheap, what's this extra 50%? People are more likely to go for it. It seems to work well for us. So yeah, keep experimenting as you step downwards. And when you find a spot that seems to be really effective for you, you can stop there. We've been doing the same discount percentages for years with Necrodancer. So yeah, this is a cool post by A Restless. So they're talking about people discussing the usefulness of negative Steam reviews from players who played the game thousands of hours. It's always the joke, like, played 1,000 hours but hate this game, negative review, thumbs down. So they made a tool that analyzes all of the different reviews. And this actually ties into something from Chris a little bit later on. But it's a pretty cool tool. So this is the results for Crypto the Necrodancer. And so you can see the reviews by playtime. So people who just bought the game are the ones most likely to give it negative review. And then it goes down over time, of course, which makes sense because, if they play it for 10, 20 hours, that is an indication that they liked it somewhat. It's funny, though, that the trough is like 50 to 100 hours, and then it starts to go back up again. So, yeah, somewhere, I think maybe the super hardcore fans, as they get super really invested into the game, then some of the minor flaws of the game start to piss them off. And then they post negative reviews about that. But anyone who's played 1,000 hours of the 60 people who have reviewed the game after 1,000 hours, they're all 100% thumbs up. So it's it's pretty cool. And then down here, possibly the most interesting thing. What do people do after they leave the review? Which is a cool thing I never thought about analyzing before. So if someone left a negative review, that's this side over here, after 0 to 2 hours, 14% of them kept playing afterwards, whereas 85% of them stopped playing within 24 hours and never played it again. That kind of makes sense. But then you see, as you go down, so the people who played it for 100 or 500 hours, the people who were, well, like the trough here, I guess, is 50 to 100. The trough. So these people who played it for 50 to 100 hours and then left a negative review, half of them still kept playing the game. So they're like thumbs down, but I'll keep spending my time on it. Pretty interesting. And then it goes down in percent again. So it's weird that there's a bit of a trough here and there as well. I don't really understand that. It would be cool to look at a bunch of other games and see if they have similar troughs. It might be implying something. So Chris, he's the one who made the tool for sort of analyzing reviews by language. And he's improved that, so we're going to take a look at the improvements that he's made in a second. But he also talked about trying to find a more accurate Boxleiter number, because every Steam review is public, and he discovered that even if you look at a user who's like turned off, set their privacy settings to maximum, you can still see for them how many products they've reviewed and how many products in their account. So if their account is private, you can't see what those products are, but you can still see how many, which is pretty interesting. So you can, because reviews must be public, like by default, otherwise how are people going to see this review? That data shows up on their store page, even if they set all their other privacy settings to max. And so Chris is talking about the fact that we could use this information to try to calculate a new Boxleiter number for new games. However, I commented in this thread somewhere that the tricky thing is the old Boxleiter number is different from the new Boxleiter number because Valve has changed the way that Steam works, and people are sort of prompted to review games more now than before. So people review more than they did before, which has skewed things. The Boxleiter numbers are no longer the same. So what we would want to do is not look at all historical data, which I think Chris scraped everything. So that would kind of mash up the old data with the new data after, the store changed. What instead would be best is to scrape repeatedly and then over time see how the Boxleiter number changes. So, if Chris scrapes again in a month, and then we look at the Boxleiter number for all of the reviews and stuff in that month, then that would be a fairly accurate representation of the absolute current Boxleiter number, which would be pretty useful. The only downside is, which I think Jake points out somewhere in this thread, that this is clumping together all games on Steam, most of which are AAA games. So, GTA 5 and then the other ones like that just sell forever and ever. They're going to be getting reviewed way more than our small indie games, right? So we are going to be getting a Boxleiter number that is kind of for AAA games. And unfortunately, because a lot of the profiles are private and we can't see all of the products in their account, we can't tell like if they own an indie game or not. And so we can't sort of filter out the AAA games and only look at indie games. So it would be a Boxleiter number for all of Steam, which would still be better than nothing. And we could see how it changes over time, which would be cool. Yeah, it just would be neat to see that every time Valve makes a change to the algorithm or the way the store is laid out, like the library changes and stuff like that, what happens to the overall Boxleiter number for Steam? I want to know. Somebody calculate this, please. Data nerds assemble. Yes, that's what we do every 3 weeks here. We all get together and we nerd out about numbers. But yeah, thanks, Chris, for doing that analysis. And this app is super cool too. I'm not sure how useful this graph is. It looks pretty noisy, but and yeah, the other thing that Chris is posting about is his tool, Steam Scout. Okay, so what are the changes? Now view the reviewers' playtime by language and see how the positive and negative reviews are distributed. So you can see of the English reviewers, how long did they play? And so you can see if certain languages users stick around longer Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure how actionable it is. However, this information is certainly actionable. It shows that, like, hey, we probably should have localized to Polish. But otherwise, we made pretty decent calls. Although, Spanish, well, we do have Spain Spanish. We don't have Latin America Spanish. Maybe it could have been higher if we had localized in it, or Turkish. Maybe it would be up here if we had localized in it. But yeah, interesting. Well, thanks, Chris. Okay, so now this next section is about wish lists and the conversion of wish lists collected before launch. So you remember we talked about this. Both Jake and Simon have been posting about it. So there was speculation a little while ago, I think by Mike Rose, that older wish lists were worse. They would convert more poorly than newer wish lists. And so Jake found a way to grab data from the Steam backend and cross-reference two different data sets in order to create graphs like this. I wish I could do the same, because Necrodancer launched before wishlists were even a thing, I think. Or no, I think wishlists were a thing at the time, but they weren't tracking the data in the same way that they are now. So if I go and look at Necrodancer's wishlist data, I think it only goes back to 2017 when the game launched in early access in 2014. So I can't do the same sort of like pre-launch analysis, unfortunately. But once Industries of Titan and Phantom Brigade come out on Steam next year, we will be able to do this sort of thing. But anyway, the moral of the story is that Jake found that old wish lists, new wish lists, they convert about the same. And Tomer seemed to get the same sort of results here. Gonzalo got somewhat similar results, although the last few months before release worse. And then Alina, talking about data from Yes, Your Grace, she was saying that month 4 was their best month for conversions, and in this thread, she mentions that this month did the best because it was all organic. It's because they didn't have any sort of outside influence. Like I think some of these months they had closed betas and they were closed alphas, and they were incentivizing people to sign up, by convincing them to wishlist and things like that. They were getting more press, and that was skewing the results they were getting from their wishlist, I think, because they were artificially incentivizing people to wishlist. Whereas if you just get sort of natural wishlists by people just browsing Steam and stumbling across your game, then those ones convert at a better rate. And so it looks like if you filter out unnatural wish lists, then it doesn't really seem to matter if it's an old wish list or a new one. They convert about the same, which is useful to know, and good news for folks like me who have Industries of Titan and Phantom Brigade have had coming soon pages on Steam for quite a long time. We've been collecting a lot of wish lists over a long period of time. So hopefully it's true that those old ones we collected a year or more ago are still going to be good. But yeah, anyway, this is all prelude to Simon's article. So he did a new analysis of what Jake covered maybe a year or more ago, where Jake surveyed a bunch of indies, asked them how many wish lists they had before launch, and then how that correlated to their first week sales. Because, hey, that's a very useful thing to have before you launch, to be able to help you judge what kind of sales results can I expect. It helps you to scale your expectations, but also decide, maybe my game's not going to do as well as I hoped, I should scale it down and ship it, or maybe even cancel it. Or if you're getting tons of wish lists and it looks like your first week is going to be very strong, then maybe you spend a bit more time and money polishing it up, make it a little larger. It's just more information allows you to make better decisions. And graphed it, and here's his graph. So it does look a little different from Jake's, but not too significantly different. The big takeaways are the average is 0.3 sales in week 1 per wish list, and a median of 0.2. So I think Jake's, the average was like 0.5, and the median was maybe a little higher, or maybe around 0.2 as well. But I think these are a little bit lower than Jake's. It could be indication that things have changed over time, or maybe Simon just got a different sample. But bear in mind that this 0.36 sales per wish list is not that 0.36 of your wish lists for every one of your wish lists 0.36 will convert. It's instead that this is how many units you sold in your first week as compared to your wish list. So it doesn't have anything to do with how many of your wish lists converted. It's just correlating those two things. So those sales could have come from elsewhere. They could have come from not your wish list, right? But it's just sort of clear that having more wish lists is an indication that your game is a bit more likely to succeed, has more awareness, that sort of thing. But the cool thing about this graph that you cannot see in Jake's graph is this plateau here. I'm curious to hear what those of you in the chat think about this plateau, but I have a theory. I'll explain my theory in a second, but the rest of the article Simon talks about, so this is the whole data set. Then he graphs it again. If you only look at games that have more than 1,000 wish lists, and it's actually the average goes lower if you filter out some of the games with fewer wish lists, which is pretty interesting. That might be an indication that of what we learned before, that artificially incentivizing people to wishlist your game produces wish lists that are less likely to convert. And so if you have more wish lists, that maybe mean that you were more likely to have artificially incentivized signups, wish lists, and as a result you get a lower average. And then he went on to go further to find games that have only more than 10,000 wish lists at launch. The average is back up again, possibly an indication that in order to get that many wish lists, there has to be some real organic excitement about the game, not just sort of false incentivization. But the median still 0.2. So a few takeaways from this. 0.2, I think if you're going to try to estimate based on your wish list data, what sort of sales results, what kind of gross revenue could I expect in week one, you should be looking at 0.2-ish if you're trying to be conservative, and possibly even less than that, because some of them are less than that, right? So some of them are 0.1 or below. So if you want to be conservative, 0.1. If you want to be like reasonable, like it should be something around there, 0.2. Multiply your number of wish lists by 0.2, then multiply that by your sale price, and that will be your gross revenue for week one, a somewhat conservative version. It's harsh, yeah, but it's good to know what you could reasonably expect. So, but yeah, the last thing I want to talk about is this plateau. It's very visible here in this greater than 1,000 wish list. So did anybody say what they think it is? I've said before that there are kind of tiers of exposure on Steam. There's a bunch of different places where your game can show up on Steam, right? And the difference between not showing up there and showing up there is stark. Like you get either more traffic or you don't get that traffic. So there is a significant difference. So it may be new and trending, like Quixote is suggesting, or maybe some other visibility trigger. Like it could be that you get some exposure in the main carousel or something like that. And so having more wish lists makes it more likely that you might trigger that. And so that's why this plateau is more noticeable here than here. And then if you do trigger that, your week one sales are going to be better, not really because of your wish list, but because you triggered a better visibility slot on Steam. So I'm fairly confident that that's what's happening here. I don't know why else there would be such a big drop off. So we always knew that those tiers existed, but this is just sort of actual data to back it up. So it does seem like if you don't have very many wish lists, they are more likely to convert better, probably because they were not sort of falsely incentivized. Then when you get to the sort of the midsection of some low thousands, they may be slightly lower quality, but then if you get into the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, it starts to go up again. But yeah, the one with the highest ratio, 20,000, 4,000, and then 76,000. So more is better in general, it seems like, but yeah, you never know what fraction you're going to get. And there has been some speculation recently that more is not necessarily better, because if you get a bunch of poorly converting wish lists and they all come to your store page and then they don't buy the game, depending on how heavily Steam's algorithm weights conversion rate of your store page, that might actually harm your store page. If more people are coming, looking at your store page and then going no, then the algorithm might say, oh, this store page is not good at converting. Let's send the eyeballs to a store page that is good at converting. So it could possibly actually harm you, but we don't know precisely how the algorithm works. Another article from Simon, this time about the Switch and what is selling on Switch. So yeah, this is an article about Simon talking about looking at Bigasaur's chart that we're going to look at shortly, and sort of the conclusions that he drew from it, which I think they're somewhat similar to the conclusions that we drew, that there are a few different groups. There's sort of the first-party Nintendo games that just sit in the charts and sell forever. There's some third-party AAA games also sit in the charts, sell forever. And then there's a few indies like Goose Game, or probably more properly Overcooked, Cuphead, things like that, that just sort of stay in the charts all the time, despite not being on sale. So there's a few. And then there are indie games that spike into the charts because of sales. Now, I do think there's two sort of categories here. There's ones like Necrodancer that, sure, we're not in the charts when we're not on sale, but we're also not doing the 99% off thing that a lot of these games are doing in order to get into the charts. It would be really nice. I don't know if anyone from Nintendo ever listens to the stream, but if they could change it so the chart was not based on units sold, but instead on revenue, then people wouldn't be able to use this gimmick of just putting their game 99% off, getting a lot of units sold, and then getting into the top sellers charts as a result of that, and then self-perpetuating. Once they're in the charts, they get more visibility, they get more sales. If it was based on revenue only, then putting it 99% off, they wouldn't make very much revenue because of that such a steep discount. That would not be enough to push them in the charts, and you wouldn't have the self-perpetuating cycle. I do think that games that people are more interested in would get the visibility instead if it was changed to work that way. But yeah, that's stuff that we already kind of knew from before, from looking at Bigasaur's charts. So yeah, Bigasaur did the chart for May. So last time we streamed, it was still in May, and so since then, May has ended, and he put this chart out. So thank you, Bigasaur, again for doing this. He does have to do a lot of manual work to sort of correlate all of this every single day, writing this down in order to make these estimates. So thanks for doing that for the community, Bigasaur. You're the best. So yeah, we've seen in the past that once you get down past about 25, it starts to get a bit noisier. So I think that we'll stop there. But yeah, I don't think there's anything too surprising in these top 25. I don't know why that moved up. It was only a small amount though. Xenoblade. Yeah, Minecraft Dungeons, you'd expect that. Such a big update, like a new Minecraft game. You expect it to be high in the charts. No, I think it's mostly as expected. But yeah, like Simon said, there's certain tiers, and occasionally indies bust into those tiers, but I mean, there's certain groups of games that sell well, and it doesn't look like there's a new indie in the charts. Still the usuals like Stardew and Cuphead and such. So yeah, still on the Switch topic here. So SMG Studio talking about their first year of stats for the sales of their game, and I just thought this graph was interesting. We've been talking a lot about demos, and we have talked in the past about demos on Switch and how there is a unique advantage to it, such that if people play your demo on Switch and then later your game goes on sale, they will get a notification, they'll get an email about it, which is pretty cool. And they noticed that after they put a demo online, their sales went up. The thickness of this tail is higher than before, and it definitely is. So they only showed the beginning of this sale, but this would be a sale where the people who played the demo would have got a notification. So in theory, this sale could have been better. However, they discounted 25% before and now only 20% this time, so a lower discount, so you'd expect a worse result. So yeah, speaking of the good old days and starting out, this is a blog post on Gamasutra of a developer working on a game called Starcom Nexus, and talking about how they got started as an indie kind of late in their career, made a few different games, learned a lot, and then I think this is maybe their third game, and just talking about the trials and tribulations and how launch went and marketing, and they early accessed it, And the results were pretty decent in early access, but then despite being kind of pessimistic about the full release, did really well. I still don't fully understand what the conditions are that cause a game to do better at its full release than at early access. Necrodancer definitely did not do better at full release than at early access. However, we had the Necrothon event for our early access launch, and we did not have a similar event for our full launch. So that certainly could have made a difference. Also, we had a very unfortunate thing happen to us right before we were going to launch the full version in April of 2015. Valve contacted us and said, hey, we're going to do a roguelike bundle, or a roguelike sale, like a sale specifically for roguelikes. You want to be a part of it? And we're like, well, of course, because our game is a roguelike game and it's selling well and all that, but that sale was going to happen like right when we were planning to launch, and we didn't want to launch like right in the middle of a sale. So instead, we like crunched and moved our launch a week earlier. It's hard to do when you've only got a few weeks left. You got like 3 weeks left till launch, and then to compress that down to 2 is tough. So I did a lot of programming to try to make that happen so we could launch a bit before that sale. But even still, we launched a bit before the sale, but then the sale, I think, may have taken some of the wind out of our sails because there were so many other games, so many other roguelike games on sale at that time. So a bit unfortunate, but with how Necrodancer has sold overall in general, I definitely cannot complain too much. It was just so anyway. This article is somewhat long, but I think it has a lot of interesting information in it. And anytime there's data about an early access launch and a full launch, especially where the full launch is better, I'm curious about it. So I'm just filing it away as an example of such a thing happening. So hopefully that we can come up with a theory as to why some games do better at full launch and some don't, so that we can better predict it and so that we can improve our full launches. Another thing, I've been aware of this for a while, I just haven't covered it on the Clark Tank, but I guess we probably should start to. On the Epic Store, there is a top sellers chart, and I haven't covered it before because it didn't seem to be changing too much. But actually, now it has in the last few weeks. Let's take a look at the top sellers for Epic Games Store. So Old World or Satisfactory would be, some of the smaller-ish games in here. Detroit Become Human, which is now on Steam as well. Crew. So it's not seeing many indies in here. It's also part of the reason why I haven't been covering it, but I think we should start checking it out just in case if indies do break through, we want to see it and learn from it, right? So, all right, let's finally do our homework, the Steam Top 50, and there's been a lot of new games coming out, hitting the charts. It's going to be a busy week for new stuff. Now, I should probably say this because I haven't said it in a while. If you look at the top sellers on Steam, first of all, you should look at the global top sellers, because otherwise it's going to show you the top sellers kind of for your region. And like, if you're in North America, it might not show you games that sell well in Germany, like the bus simulator games and things like that they enjoy there, or the ones that do well in Asia. So you're going to get a skewed sense for what sells well and what doesn't stuff. But you'll see that Counter-Strike is here, but it's not there because it magically includes revenue from free-to-play games. And there are some games where you pay for them upfront, but they also have have in-app purchases that add to the revenue generated by the game. And so if you click on games, it includes in-app purchases and all of that, and gives you a truer picture of revenue being generated on Steam. So we discovered this years ago on the Clark Tank, and so this tool that we use takes that into account. And so that's why what you look at here may be different than what we see here, because this is actually the true representation, and it shows you the average over the last 24 hours, and it shows you how it's been moving. So like it was number 2, and then down to 3, and then 4, and so that's why we have this tool. It's super cool. Hopefully that's useful for you. So CSGO, yep. It's usually around the top. Detroit Become Human, so it just came out. Minor discount, so not too surprising to see it up there. Same with Outer Wilds, finally on Steam. Also came out on the 18th. 33% off as well. A pretty big discount. So yeah, not too surprising to see that at the top of the charts. Dota. So again, Dota wouldn't be here if we didn't filter it in this way because it's free. Now, Sea of Thieves. This is actually new, not just new to Steam. This is new. This kind of song. We needed a genre name for this kind of song because it's becoming quite common in trailers as well. Sort of irreverent, but cocky. A lot of trailers use this kind of song these days. And the other thing is, the art style is a bit like cutesy. The game is kind of serious and violent, but the art style is not. But yet still seems to be doing well. I think possibly might do even better if it was a bit more serious. Sea of Thieves is new to Steam, but it's been on PC. Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Oh, it was only on Windows Store. Well, that's why I wouldn't have known. The gameplay's not that serious? Well, anyway, that one has been doing well since it came out, so we'll keep an eye on it to see how it continues to do. Hardspace Shipbreaker, we know about that one. We're going to play it in a little bit. Rainbow Six Siege. So Titanfall 2 just came to Steam. Also on the 18th. Civ 6 is perennial. So Persona 4 Golden. I've never played a Persona game. Also, I don't know if I ever will because I play Smash Bros. And I hate Joker. I do love anime, but not anime games. A coming-of-age story that sets the protagonist and his friends on a journey kickstarted by a chain of serial murders. I don't know if this description would cut it if the game wasn't already so well known, but yeah, I guess this just wasn't on Steam before. A popular game, of course, so not too surprising to see it doing well. Alright, Hunter Call of the Wild is on sale. So Satisfactory came to Steam since our last Clark Tank.
Oh, hey, little friend. Oh, aren't you adorable? So, assemble production lines, expand your base, assert dominance.
Satisfactory is a first-person open-world factory-building game with a dash of exploration and combat. Play alone or with friends, explore an alien planet, create multi-story factories, and enter conveyor belt heaven. So I like that line, conveyor belt heaven. That's smart. Yeah, I said to some friends that if Satisfactory didn't sell extremely well on Steam, I would eat my hat. And yeah, it went straight to #1 when it came out. So not too surprising. Watch the last 5 seconds again.
Available now on Epic Steam.
Epic Steam. I like it. Desperados 3. So yeah, we could have played this as well. I'm definitely interested in it and the genre in general because we are making a tactics game with Phantom Brigade.
There's no such thing.
It's a 4-minute trailer.
You squeeze them in the eyes of your enemies.
Squeeze them in your eyes.
It all started with
that's a new one.
McCoy, and that's when the shit started to fall apart.
You made us swear on my stream.
That's where the trouble started.
What's with all this swearing?
Things got worse when we fucked over Old Man O'Hara.
You made a bad swear.
His niece, Kate.
You made a real bad swear.
Like cockroaches.
It's like one of those movie trailers where they show the whole
That's where
movie.
the story ends. Nobody.
Crazy
is.
long trailer. Why would you make a trailer this long?
Those damn varmints.
Yeah, he's rambling. Yeah, you're right. He's totally rambling. It's not really. Yeah, I'm not following the story. It's just a bunch of stuff happening. Yeah, that's a long trailer there. So yeah, I was into it for the first minute and a half or so, and then it started to get a bit long for me. But yeah, they're obviously very high quality. Glad to see other tactics games doing well on Steam. Hopefully that bodes well for us with Phantom Brigade. All right, let's keep going. So yeah, Beyond Two Souls also came out on the 18th. That was one heck of a day for games on Steam. Star Wars, Warframe, Skyrim on sale. Heavy Rain also came out on the 18th. Sims 4. So it's like EA putting out a lot of their games that they were holding on Origin only, and I guess a lot of them came out on the 18th. So Smite, Black Desert Online, they're usually around. Yu-Gi-Oh! It must have had an event or something. It's tapering off. Rust, Dead by Daylight, Silent Hill chapter, interesting. So it's a DLC. Dead Space 3, another one, just coming to Steam. Okay, so Griftlands, here we go. Another new indie game, and it was at the top of the charts when it first came out. Griftlands from our pals here in Vancouver at Clay. But it's a really cool, innovative take on the card battler genre. So you actually use cards and stuff to fight, in terms of negotiations and whatnot, not just combat. So that's what they're doing there. They're kind of like having an argument. Art is amazing as usual for Clay games. Yeah, it's really good. If you're into deck building type games, definitely check it out. And awesome to see it doing so well for them. It's been in the charts since it came out. So yeah, great news for our pals at Clay. And yeah, this and what was that train one? Monster Train or something like that? Show that card battlers are definitely a viable genre on Steam, although there are quite a few of them that don't succeed. So in terms of the percentage chance of you succeeding in a genre, it is not an easy genre by any stretch, but it is possible to succeed, and there is a large audience there if you can get their attention. So Ark's usually around. Fantasy Grounds, I don't even know what that is. It's up there because it's on sale, auction not included. So yeah, I think there's the Clay publisher sale going on right now. Star Wars Squadron, so this is pre-orders for it. Elder Scrolls on sale. Raft is usually around. Rainbow Six Siege. This is a recent DLC. Atri. What is this? It came out on that fated day, June 18th, when 1 billion games came to Steam. Is this anime? I need a butterfly so I can do that butterfly meme. Is this anime? Aniplex. I love Aniplex. Visual novel? In the charts? Anime. They didn't make a swear. I don't think they're going to make a swear. It looks like an anime outro. Yeah, it does. I think anime is kind of on the rise in terms of how well it does on Steam. So is it a visual novel? As the world sank, I found you. In the near future, a sudden and unexplained sea rise has left much of the human civilization underwater, and the little town slowly being enveloped by the ocean. An unforgettable summer is about to begin for a boy and a mysterious robot girl. Robot girl! So yeah, surprising for a visual novel to be doing so well, but Aniplex, they famous. So, okay. So visual novels can still do well on Steam. So yeah, it was a weird week because of this June 18th dumping of Electronic Arts games on the store. But other than that, there were some new things. I guess Sea of Thieves existed before, but only came to the store recently. So Shipbreaker, it's old. Satisfactory came from Epic. Desperados is new. Griftlands and Atri. Yeah, that's about it. Okay. Yeah, lots of stuff happening. All right, now we look at the new and trending just to make sure we didn't miss anything important, Sims. So yeah, went to the EA games. So it's a bad time to launch because the new and trending is full of all these games that recently came from elsewhere to the store. But Atri still managed to make it. Another visual novel. Okay, gotta keep on trucking. So yeah, a recent spike in the number of games launched on Steam. I don't know if this is to do with the festival or people trying to... The Steam summer sale hasn't happened yet. Who knows when it will be, and people might be trying to launch before that. All right, so this is Harbor Pirates' moving average graph. Thank you again, Harbor, for maintaining this graph for us. So it's weird. This is every year it starts to decline into the summer sale. And what the heck is happening? Is it a COVID thing, or is it the effect of like festivals and stuff like that? Would this have been spread out if it weren't COVID, or would it happen earlier? Like why we looked to be doing the usual thing until beginning of June. Oh, a bunch of these are the EA games. Many games release demos as separate product. Oh, does that count? Yeah, Harbor, do you know? Do demos count? Because if demos count, then that would explain it. Because, like we said, the festival drew forward a lot of games that would not have otherwise been putting out demos. Prologues are just standalone. Yeah. So yeah, if a prologue and a standalone game counts as 2, that would inflate it overall, which could explain why 2020 is just higher. Good thinking, chums. Because I remember being surprised, because at the end of last year, look, we were in this sort of tan color, yellow, and we were lower than any of the previous 2 years. And it was looking like, we were tracking the same sorts of bumps before Christmas and all that. Maybe the spikes that we saw from the end of Greenlight and of Steam Direct, maybe those bumps were over, and now we were getting to sort of a new normal where things were a bit lower. But then, in 2020, we just kept going higher and higher. And yeah, it could be because of the trend of prologues and then the festivals causing people to put more demos up. So when was the spring festival? Was it this? Also, it could be, the other thing it could be is that if a game, like when does a coming soon page get counted as, a game being on the store, especially by Harbor's data here. So Harbor is Industries of Titan, which is still coming soon, or Phantom Brigade. Is that listed, in these numbers? Or does that not happen until it goes live? And does posting a demo count as going live? Because that could definitely account for this. Because if 900 games, previously had a coming soon page, and now they added their demo, and now that might make them count as being live, that would distort the numbers big time. All right, well, we'll see. If that's the case, then we will see a depression later on because we drew forward a bunch of the activity. All right, well, let's keep that in mind. Okay, let's do Kickstarter real fast. Dawngate, the Revival Project. What does that even mean? The MOBA genre redefined. What does that even... Okay, we have to watch that. Okay, how do you redefine the MOBA genre? I want to know. Oh, it's an old game. Yeah, I'm concerned for a number of reasons. All right, I get the idea. So it seems like it's the community of a closed game wanting to acquire the rights and then develop it. It's a bit concerning for 2 reasons. Did they already get a deal such that if this Kickstarter succeeds, that they will get those rights? Because if they didn't, what are they going to do with this money if the original owners don't want to sell the IP? Are they going to refund it all? And then second, are these people game developers? Because even if you get the rights, are you a talented game development team that can make a MOBA, which is not an easy thing to do? I'm a bit scared about this one. I hope that it goes well. Wow, 500 backers made $100,000. That is a lot of dollars per backer. Okay, we're playing some Shipbreaker. I have to leave at 4 o'clock today on the dot because I have another meeting to go to, an important one. So hopefully we can understand what Shipbreaker is all about. Humankind has industrialized much of the solar system. Earth has deteriorated into a place of squalor and decay. In orbit, a new breed of worker has emerged. The Shipbreaker. New breed of worker. The labor is extremely dangerous, but for a select few, the hazard pay is worth the risk. It's a pretty cool intro. I like the visual effects they have on this, making it all kind of grainy. This game looks freaking cool. Oh man, seriously? This building that I'm living in is somewhat new, and they've been doing fire alarm testing a lot. Are they going to do it during my freaking stream?
Welcome to Morgan.
That would be great, correct? Ugh. I've heard people say that the controls are clunky and that they don't like it. And I've heard other people say that they're supposed to be clunky because it makes it feel like you are...
Warning. Workday limits are out of bounds.
I'm failing at the tutorial.
Turn back.
But I lost the antenna.
9,346-50.
It highlights when you can cut it, yeah, when you're close enough. Is that enough to cut it? Yeah, maybe you don't need to cut it as much as I'm thinking. You just need to kind of heat it up for a bit. I thought I was like drawing a line on it, but you don't really need to. I was trying to pull it, but I guess maybe I have to push it. Huh. It's a cool game, but yeah, the tutorial is a little confusing for me. Are you going in? It's hard to tell the position in space, like how far is it from the thing. We did it.
Salvage secured. Credits to...
Tutorial really wants you to fulfill the work order before giving you more info. Oh, is that the problem? I'm just like not following the... Ah, it went away, that's why I wasn't seeing. So I would like to play more of this, but I think I'm gonna need to end it there. But if anyone else who's played it more could let me know in chat what the rest of the game is like. I assume you get more tools and you salvage things that are more difficult. I've heard people say that it's kind of like an action puzzle game, so you're trying to figure out the best way to salvage these things and do it in a reasonable amount of time and use the tools that you have as efficiently as possible. But I'm not sure what the meta is like you buy different tools and things like that. But yeah, it is, as I expected, kind of like a different genre than usual. The thing that it's closest to is like those real work simulators, like that train station refurbishing game, or even the games where you like drive a bus or things like that. So maybe by skinning it in sort of sexy sci-fi spaceship skin, they've made it even more interesting to a mainstream audience, like an audience that would not normally do this sort of train station refurbishing type game. It seems like it's cool work because you're doing it in space with cool tools and stuff like that. So some debt aspect, yeah, it seems like there's debt repayment. So maybe it's like Animal Crossing in that respect. So yeah, instead of being an entirely new genre, it just might be one of those games that it's basically the real life work kind of genre, which already existed, but was not super mainstream. It worked well in some places, like in Germany and some other countries. They really seem to like those types of games, but it's possible that the theming of this is more appropriate and made it more interesting to a wider audience and possibly North American audience. Animal Crossing in space, yeah, instead of Tom Nook, you have this Lynx Corporation or whoever it is that you owe millions of credits to. There have been other games that have done that, where they take a known genre and change the theming or expand its popularity, or sometimes take a known genre that exists elsewhere, like Stardew. Those types of farming games existed for a long time on Nintendo platforms, but have never been on PC to that sort of degree. So those sorts of things can happen, but somewhat unpredictable, because normally you would look at a genre and think the size of that genre is fixed. You would not normally expect that you could grow it. Expecting that you could grow it, that's the exception, not the norm, right? It doesn't happen that often, but it looks like they managed to do it by figuring out, oh, there is, the genre was like this before, the size of it, but there were these people over here that like sci-fi stuff that would enjoy this type of game if the theming was more to their liking. And so they found that overlap that previously, hadn't been explored. So anyway, that's my take on Hardspace : Shipbreaker. It seems pretty fun. I would definitely like to play more of it, and it's always cool just to learn about games that are succeeding in new ways. Because that's a difficult thing to do, and if we can learn more about how games are able to do that sort of thing, then we'll be more likely to be able to succeed doing a similar thing ourselves. So that's great. Congrats to the Shipbreaker team for their success and for teaching us new stuff about what kind of games can work. It's pretty great. Thanks, chums. See you next time.